The Internet does not exist. What we colloquially refer to as the Internet is just a global network of all networks, formed by a consensus of voluntary participants. In a network of computers, devices have to be assigned unique identifiers in order to be able to find and send information between each other. If more networks want to make connections, they have to coordinate these unique identifiers for each device in every connected network. On the Internet, these unique identifiers are called IP addresses. Every phone, laptop, website, or server has to have one, and no two devices or servers can have the same IP address. These IP addresses are assigned by the Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers. ICANN is a non-governmental, non-profit corporation that works on the basis of voluntary international consensus. When ICANN assigns an IP address, voluntary participants agree on that decision, and the IP address is broadcast on the Internet. Without a body like ICANN to coordinate IP addresses worldwide, there wouldn't be one unified global Internet. While ICANN's structure is beneficial to everyone that participates in it, there is no rule that says countries have to be a part of it. In an alternate reality, governments could set up national authorities to assign their own IP addresses that wouldn't be able to make connections outside of their jurisdiction. Users would be locked in to access only those addresses governed by their national authority. And while ICANN makes the Internet function as a one unified global network, absence of such an international consensus mechanism would create a multiverse of parallel internets where the concept of reaching anyone across the world would be completely alien. Many academics are sounding alarms that the death of the unified global internet is already happening. More and more countries are voicing their desire for digital sovereignty and techno-isolationism. Experts are worried this cyber-balkanization is creating a multiverse of national internets and corporate walled gardens that they refer to as the Splinternet. If Internet can be understood as a worldwide network of all networks, Splinternet would be the opposite of that. It is when nations stop participating in the ICANN consensus and begin assigning their own IP addresses. It is also when governments set up nationwide firewalls to restrict free flow of information to and from the country. Both of these trends are already well on their way to create the world's first Splinternet. Ukraine, under the invasion from Russia, recently sent a request to ICANN to remove all Russian IP addresses from the Internet. This would essentially mean every .ru website and every Russian smartphone or computer would disappear from the global Internet. ICANN rejected Ukraine's proposal on the basis that it isn't technically feasible, nor is it their role to punitively eliminate IP addresses from the Internet as a form of sanctions. ICANN's decisions are accepted by a consensus of all Internet operators, which guarantees no one actor has authority over the other. The only actor that can effectively shut down Russia's Internet is Kremlin itself. The Russian government is preparing for an event just like the one desired by Ukraine. In 2021, Moscow launched the Russian National Domain Name System as a rival body to ICANN, whose goal is to be able to continue operating Russian IP addresses even if they were cut off from the global Internet. On June 15 and July 15, 2021, Russia tested the new system by disconnecting local Internet service providers and telecom providers from the Internet to see if Russian websites could still run. According to the official sources, the tests were successful. The tests are meant to be repeated annually and are part of a broader initiative to build a sovereign Splinternet dubbed RUNET that could function independently of the global consensus. A move like this would make Russia's domestic Internet more resilient. But if more countries or blocs follow suit, it could start an information cold war. It would take the form of an Internet arms race. Nations could start feeling encouraged to launch cyber attacks to cripple the other's Splinternets, because there wouldn't be the risk of backfire and collateral damage without the former's Internet interconnectedness. Splinternet doesn't need to wait for newly formed national authorities to disassemble the global Internet consensus. Internet edge providers, such as social media and search engines, have become central gatekeepers of much of the content visible to most users. Some of these services are run by companies with quasi-infrastructure status. Amazon Web Services runs cloud operations for many major services with a monopoly nearing market share. Google controls anywhere between 70 to 90% global search engine market. Facebook, owning 3 major social networking apps, doesn't have an alternative. Apple, with its stranglehold on the iPhone ecosystem, has a unilateral control over what apps or devices are allowed on their platform. So whenever these companies make a business decision, it can be detrimental to millions or even billions of users. When Apple decided to remove news media apps like Quartz or the New York Times from the Chinese App Store, it meant that no iPhone user would be able to use these apps, and there was no way to work around it. Because Android users can install apps from arbitrary sources and not just the Play Store, Apple's decision curated a Splinternet for iPhone users in China. When Amazon decided to curtail its operation in Russia, it meant that Russian customers would lose access to Amazon's global marketplace, cloud service, and streaming. With other companies like Dell, Microsoft, Oracle, or Visa, there is now a vacuum of services that will remain absent or will be provided locally, splintered away from the global internet. The European Union began pressuring tech companies to not only ban Russian media like RT and Sputnik, but remove any content from search engines and social media sites repeating their content. While anyone can argue that state propagandist media are harmful, the trigger-happy crackdown on misinformation would only further splinter Europeans from unrestricted access to the internet. Fulfilling the demands for content censorship on social media and search engines is frighteningly easy. Facebook and Google have spent years training their algorithms to personalize content in social media feeds and search results. Reports reveal that most content users subscribe to will never appear on their feeds. Instead, a number of factors such as your behavior and interactions on the website will determine what you see. Google has admitted their algorithm has a filter bubble problem, a term explaining how algorithmic bias makes different suggestions to individual users based on variables that are outside of the scope of relevant search queries. There is no other country where the collusion between corporations and the government managed to create a more splintered version of the internet than China. Since the Chinese government has erected the Great Firewall, Chinese services do not allow foreign information to flow freely into China. A newly formed cyber administration demands that all citizens' posts, comments, and searches are tied to their real-life identities. In the effort to erase online anonymity, VPN services and Tor were made legal in the country, with companies like Apple happily obliging with the crackdown on online freedoms. Anyone who sets up a private chat group in China is legally responsible for all of its content. Internet companies are required to monitor and rate the conduct of online users, assigning them scores following the Communist Party line. Government censors will ban and remove any app or content that previous censorship mechanisms wouldn't take care of. All foreign social media apps are banned, leaving only government-approved Chinese companies to serve online platforms. And because everyone in China can only use local services, there is no direct line of communication between users in China with the rest of the world. China is currently laying a framework for the new Internet Protocol, a top-down design for a global network that will be built by the Chinese government and companies. The differences with the current Internet Protocol are stark. While the global IP allows anyone to host their own website so long as they have internet access and a computer, in China, you would have to apply for a license to do so. The global internet is fundamentally leaky, meaning no amount of nationwide firewall controls can completely seal off their users. The new IP would hard-code access controls into the protocol to allow the Chinese censors to restrict devices and networks on an automated basis. Under the new IP, internet access will be permissioned, and administrators would have the power to operate a whitelist mode for devices, apps, and websites available on the network. All data on the new IP would be shared with the government and used to serve AI, big data, and machine learning applications. The Chinese haven't laid out any specifics on how they want to build the new IP framework, but if they succeed, they could start offering it as a service to developing nations, expanding their control on China's Splinternet abroad. Not many people realize that they are able to access the internet because their internet service provider gave them that permission. As you're paying your monthly internet bill, you're paying to use your carrier's pipes and cables they've spent billions of dollars laying down into the ground. But if at any point global ISPs no longer exchange each other's connections, the value of your internet bill goes down to zero very fast. The trust in the telecommunication providers is the core of this issue. We are carrying and using devices capable of high bandwidth wireless transmission without ever touching telephone pipes. Our devices could communicate with each other in a peer-to-peer manner even if the government shut down the internet for the whole country. This is where the solution to the Splinternet lies. If we can create our own mesh network of peer-to-peer connections with every phone, tablet or PC within reach, we wouldn't have to rely on ground wires as much. The only limitation would be intercontinental communication in extremely remote areas, but that could be solved if people were allowed to beam internet down from the sky with drones or satellites. But cities and more densely populated countries should already be capable of achieving this. There are two projects that I'm following closely for this purpose, although they are not quite there. Briar and Kush are building peer-to-peer networks that don't need the internet to work at all. They can use Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, use Tor and end-to-end encryption to protect the privacy and anonymity of participants. Neither of these are mesh networks, as they do not route traffic. But the first peer-to-peer network that begins offering mesh routing would be our best chance to create a truly permissionless, neutral, and consent-based internet that can't be taken down by any single authority. So as the governments are trying to replace the unified global internet with Splinternet, we can start building an entirely new, uncontrollable internet from scratch.